On the News Channel 5 network, this is MorningLine with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Barris here on a Thursday. Glad to have you here. Here's a question for you right off the top. Are you going to vote? Have you voted? Are you registered to vote? Okay, that was more than one question, wasn't it? I apologize. But we know this is a big year for it, of course. And I anticipate many of you plan on voting, especially those of you who are intelligent enough to be watching this program. I think are engaged and you want to have a say in what your government does and who's elected. The problem is Tennessee, believe it or not, still ranks 45th in voter registration among all of the states in this country, and there are issues to go in hand with that and what might get more people out. Why is this happening? We're going to get into all of that this morning and take some of your phone calls. I'd like to know why you don't vote if you choose not to, which is your right, of course, or why you think it's important to. We'll get the phone number up there, but we're going to talk about the American Democracy Project and more, which is going on here in Middle Tennessee. Dr. Mary Evins is with us. She's a professor of history from MTSU. Professor Evins, it's nice to have you on.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
I mean, are you going to vote?
I have, for you talking about in the preference primary, I've already voted. I voted in early voting,
okay.
Of course.
And I would imagine, based on what you do, you have always voted, haven't you? I mean, when you became old enough to vote, boom, that was your thing.
Well, it was, and I credit that to having had magnificent parents who did that training thing that we would like every single solitary American family to do, which is be sure that your children understand what his or her role is in the American democracy, and my folks were able to impart that and get us in the voting booths when we were just children to go in with them and experience what that felt like behind what in those days were sort of canvas dividers as we would secret away to vote with our mother and dad.
I did the same thing with my son, who's now at the University of Tennessee. Now, you know, I wonder if I don't remind him, would he be aware of it and get out and vote? I think he would, you know, like a lot of kids these days. They're kind of like, if it's not in front of them, they don't think of it. But I did the same thing. Now, not everyone has parents to do that. Some people may have parents that don't vote. But I think you're exactly right. It starts there, doesn't it? Well,
it starts there, and then it must continue. I mean, clearly what we as parents do for the first 18 years of the lives of our children, that's the starting point. And then when your child leaves your home and heads off, in your case, to the University of Tennessee, the folks like me, his professors there, take on that responsibility, because we know that voting is a learned exercise. It is not something that you're just born comprehending, and it has to be learned, it has to be studied, and it has to be practiced, and it requires vigilant repetition and motivation and excitement and shared knowledge about our role in this democratic enterprise.
I want to get this to you, and maybe this is something could be later in the show, but I want to hit you on it now because my own son asked me this question, and it's kind of like, Dad, does my vote really matter when we know there can be elections where one candidate wins the popular vote, as we know, and the other is elected president because of the Electoral College?
That's right.
How would you answer that to him? I mean, I tried to, and I think I did a decent job, but what would you say to someone like, what's the point if the popular vote doesn't count and the Electoral College can go a different direction?
Well, the Electoral College issue is a whole other thing. And
I know. I don't
we
want
talk
too far
about
afield, but you know, that's one of the things that might deter people from voting.
No, well, it shouldn't, because that's just one piece. And the truth of the matter is, every vote counts. Every vote counts. Every vote counts. How often can I say that? It may seem to get lost in the millions of votes at the presidential level, but it comes down to our Senate seats. It comes down to our congressional seats in our home districts. It comes down to our state senators and our state representatives and our county commissions and our city officials and our school boards. And voting those down ballots is absolutely mandatory. Every vote literally does count. The numbers of instances in which a single vote has had an enormous impact, those histories are great, and no more great than right here in the state of Tennessee, in which women got the right to vote nationally through the 19th Amendment by one vote in the Tennessee General Assembly.
Which is something we're going to be spending a lot of time here at News Channel 5 celebrating this year as that comes about. You make an excellent point. My son's question probably was in reference to the presidential election. But your votes, how many times have we seen, you know, in some of these races, it's separated just by a couple dozen votes or something along those lines, and how crucial it is that you vote in every election.
Well, and even at the presidential level, truth be told, I mean, when they talk about the popular vote and they count those numbers, I mean, we in the United States are remarkably divided, and the difference between one side and the other is just almost minuscule. And seeing that number is remarkable. And I need to tell you that here in the state of Tennessee, the numbers of people who vote represent just a teeny-weeny percentage of our actual Tennessee population who could vote. Usually when the numbers are presented about how many Tennesseans voted in a particular election, they're referring to those who voted among our registered voters. But the fact that we have so many Tennesseans who are not even registered, who are 18 years of age and U.S. citizens and therefore perfectly applicable to vote.
Well, and you know what that means. And it's not just Tennessee, even though Tennessee has a real problem with it. It means a very small handful of people are dictating the candidates that win and the policies that affect everyone. That's an enormous amount of power for the people who do vote, and they make that decision. And if you sit home on your hands, then you're going to have to live by whatever their leaders decide to do.
That's right, and that's another argument to tell your son, because it's folks from my generation who turn out. And for your son and for my students at Middle Tennessee State University, their voices can be heard if they will get out and do the deed.
Oh yeah, if only they knew, if they all went out, it'd be incredibly powerful. I mean, they would control the outcomes of elections.
The boomers are dying off. That generation is growing. They actually could take the power.
Absolutely.
They need to understand how close they are to making that happen, but they really have to come out and grab it.
Yeah, you're so right. All right, let's talk real quickly about the American Democracy Project, kind of set the stage for it and what that means and what you're doing at MTSU.
All right, happy to do that. The American Democracy Project is a program of an organization in Washington, D.C. called the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, or ASCU. It is an overarching guidance organization, if you will, for public higher education across the United States of America. And ASCU has many initiatives, but it took upon itself to craft this objective to make potent to America's universities that you are stewards of place, you are guardians of your local students, particularly the public universities in any state. You are responsible for multiple aspects of your student success. And there are basically three aspects of student success that universities focus on. One, of course, is the curricular piece. That's the content. That's why we go to college, is to learn that material. The second one that the state of Tennessee focuses on enormously, which is career development. So careers and professional capability and getting out into the workforce ready by the time you graduate. And every student wants to have a skill set that he or she can sell and market upon college graduation. But the third one that often gets very overlooked is the fact that we're training citizens, and every single solitary student who graduates from our university, whether it be the A student or the C or D student, nevertheless, each of those young people, young American citizens, is going out into society to become a member of the American population. And if we have not used those 4 years in which we have that young person to have him or her understand that they are responsible for running the country, then we've markedly failed in 1/3 of our higher education duty.
I couldn't agree more. Listen, we got to take a break on that, and when we come back, I want to talk more about just what you see in the high school students coming in and how much they know about civics. Some of what they don't know is disturbing. The number is 737-7587 is the number. If you're on hold, stay there. We'll get to more of our conversation. As you see on the screen, it's kind of like, well, why should we vote? And the answer, should you vote? Of course. And we're talking about why with our guest this morning. We'll be back with more on your calls right after this.